Chapter 9, Part 1, Dreamscape Lovers. Thalia's fingers intertwined with Elian's, their connection a silent promise amid the aftermath of their confrontation. The crimson tent stood eerily quiet, with only the defeated sovereign's labored breathing breaking the silence. Lorene lay crumpled on the ornate carpet, her perfect features marred by the mental assault that had stripped her of her power.
"We need to move,"
she whispered, tugging Elian toward the tent's back opening.
"Reinforcements could arrive any moment."
Wait.
He stooped to retrieve his silver knife, now dormant after expending its magic.
We need a mount, and there might be something here we can use.
He quickly searched through Lorene's belongings, finding a sealed message tube bearing the insignia of Pyrotus. Breaking the seal, he scanned its contents with growing concern.
As I thought. She was supposed to rendezvous with Aurelius himself tomorrow at the Crimson Cliffs. He's expecting her to deliver you personally.
Then we have until tomorrow before they realize something's wrong.
Maybe less. Sovereigns have ways of communicating that don't require physical messengers.
Outside the tent, the camp was strangely deserted. Lorene had apparently dismissed her regular guards to maintain secrecy around her valuable captive, keeping only the single Bellatory warrior Elian had dispatched. In the central corral, several massive beasts shifted nervously, perhaps sensing the aftermath of Dreamwalker energy still lingering in the air.
"What are those?"
she asked, eyes widening at creatures unlike any she'd seen before. The beasts resembled enormous desert cats with doubled shoulder height, their bodies covered not in fur but in golden scales that caught the moonlight. Each possessed 6 muscular legs and a long whip-like tail that ended in a tuft of stiff bristles. Their broad heads featured multiple heat-sensing pits above slitted amber eyes.
Sand lions,
He murmured, studying the corral.
sovereign mounts, bred specifically for desert pursuit, and
His gaze settled on one beast separated from the others, its harness adorned with crimson tassels and gold filigree.
that one's Lorene's.
You can't be serious.
Fastest way out of here.
His expression held no room for debate.
And poetic justice.
They approached the corral with cautious steps. The sand lion, a magnificent female with unusually bright scales, watched their approach with predatory interest. When they reached the enclosure, the beast lowered its head and released a low, rumbling growl.
Easy.
He murmured, extending his hand palm up towards the creature.
We're not your enemies.
The sand lion sniffed his hand, nostrils flaring. For a heart-stopping moment, it seemed poised to sound an alarm. Then, unexpectedly, it pushed its massive head against his palm, the gesture almost cat-like in its demand for attention.
"It likes you?"
Not me.
He corrected, a faint smile touching his lips.
The shadow essence from Lorene still clinging to my skin. It recognizes her scent.
He quickly unfastened the gate and led the beast out, helping Thalia mount before swinging up behind her. The sand lion shifted beneath their combined weight, adjusting its stance with the ease of a creature born to bear burdens across difficult terrain.
Hold tight.
He instructed, gathering the reins in one hand while his other arm circled her waist.
These beasts don't start gently.
Elian clicked his tongue, and the creature lunged forward with explosive power. Thalia gasped as acceleration forced her back against Elian's chest, his arm tightening instinctively around her. The sand lion tore through the silent camp's eastern boundary, its 6 legs working in perfect synchronization, covering ground with impossible speed as it hit open desert. Behind them, the small outpost receded into darkness, only the glow of a single lamp in Lorene's tent marking its position. Dust billowed behind them like a storm cloud, marking their passage across the moonlit sand. Thalia clung to the beast's harness, acutely conscious of Elian's body pressed against her back, his breath warm against her neck, as he leaned forward to guide their mount. They rode in silence for nearly an hour, the sand lion maintaining its relentless pace with seemingly inexhaustible stamina. The three moons cast overlapping shadows across dunes that appeared and vanished like waves on an endless ocean. At last, Elian guided their mount toward a distant rock formation that shimmered strangely in the moonlight.
"We're nearly there,"
He said, his arm still secure around her waist.
"Sanctuary, at least for tonight."
What is that place?
She asked, watching as the formation resolved into what appeared to be crystal spires rising from the desert floor like transparent fingers reaching for the stars.
"The Dreamer's Oasis."
He replied, something like reverence entering his voice.
"My mother brought me here once when I was young. Said it was a gift from my father, though I didn't understand what she meant until now."
As they drew closer, Thalia realized the spires weren't merely crystal, but living formations that pulsed with gentle luminescence in pastel hues that shifted like heartbeats. Between these structures, pools of water gleamed with unnatural brilliance, their surfaces impossibly still despite the desert breeze. The sand lion slowed, approaching the oasis with unexpected caution. Its ears flattened against its head, not in fear, but something closer to respect.
"Even sovereign beasts recognize power beyond their understanding,"
he observed, guiding the creature to a flat area just outside the crystal perimeter.
"We'll tether her here."
They dismounted, Elian helping Thalia down with careful hands that lingered perhaps a moment longer than necessary. The sand lion settled onto its haunches, amber eyes watching them with unusual intelligence as Elian secured its tether to a crystal outcropping.
Will it stay?
"She has no reason to leave,"
he replied, running an appreciative hand along the beast's scaled flank.
"Water, shelter, and relative safety. Everything a desert predator values."
He turned toward the oasis proper, offering his hand to Thalia with uncomplicated directness. She took it without hesitation, their fingers intertwining with natural ease. As they passed between the first crystal spires, the air around them changed, growing warmer, yet somehow easier to breathe, carrying subtle scents of flowers that shouldn't exist in desert climate. Light emanated from the formations themselves, eliminating the need for torches despite the late hour.
This place...
She breathed, wonder replacing exhaustion in her violet blue eyes.
It feels like the Dreamscape, but...
"Real.
He finished for her, understanding in his gaze.
A place where the boundaries between worlds thin naturally. My father's people created several such sanctuaries across the endless desert, though few remain intact after centuries."
They followed a path of smooth stone that wound between crystal formations and still pools. Tiny lights drifted through the air around them. Not fireflies, as Thalia first thought, but luminescent orbs that moved with deliberate purpose, occasionally pausing to inspect the visitors before continuing their aerial dance.
Dream fragments.
Elian explained, watching her fascination with the floating lights.
Physical manifestations of dreamscape energy that cross the boundary. Harmless, but curious about conscious minds.
The path opened into a sheltered grotto nestled between three of the largest crystal spires. A pool of water occupied its center, steam rising gently from its surface, despite the surrounding desert's nighttime chill. Around the pool's edge, plants unlike any in the waking world grew in profusion. Flowers with petals that changed color as they tracked the observer's movements. Grasses that chimed softly when brushed. Ferns that folded and unfurled in patterns matching nearby footsteps.
"We should be safe here,"
he said, his voice dropping to match the sacred quality of their surroundings.
"The oasis exists partially outside normal space. Those not attuned to dreamscape energies would walk right past without seeing it."
He led her to the pool's edge where cushions of moss seemed to arrange themselves in invitation. As they settled, Thalia finally had the opportunity to truly study him in the gentle illumination from the surrounding crystals. Her breath caught at what she saw. Lines of exhaustion marked his face. Dried blood still clung to tears in his clothing, and the wound on his cheek had reopened during their flight. The silver streak in his hair had returned to normal luster, but shadows beneath his eyes spoke of energy expended beyond safe limits.
"You're hurt."
She stated, one hand rising unconsciously to touch his cheek beside the wound.
"All of this for me."
Elian's eyes closed briefly at her touch, something between pain and pleasure crossing his features.
For you?
He confirmed simply.
Though I'd prefer not to make a habit of battling enhanced warriors and sovereigns. My reputation as a mere courier might suffer.
Thalia's fingertips remained against his skin as she processed his words. His attempt at humor couldn't mask the significance beneath what he'd said. The truth that vibrated between them like an unspoken confession. The connection hummed like a plucked string, resonant and undeniable. She felt it travel through her body, settling somewhere deep within her chest. The sensation unfurled there, both thrilling and terrifying in its intensity. Her gaze dropped to where they touched, watching her own fingers betray her with their lingering, unable to pull away, despite knowing she perhaps should. The moment stretched between them, heavy with possibility and unspoken words.
"In the dreamscape,
She began, her voice barely above whisper.
when our minds touched, I felt what you..."
She hesitated, courage failing before the enormity of what she'd sensed in that shared consciousness. Elian captured her hand in his, turning it to press a kiss against her palm, with such gentle reverence that tears sprang unexpectedly to her eyes.
What I feel for you?
He finished for her, his voice rough with emotion he no longer attempted to disguise.
I know. I'm sorry if that truth frightens you.
"Not frightened."
She corrected, her free hand rising to touch the silver streak in his hair.
"Overwhelmed. I've spent my life behind diplomatic masks, hiding what I truly feel, and then you..."
She shook her head, struggling to articulate the transformation his presence had wrought within her.
"You see me, not the Fathomark's daughter, not a political asset, just me."
The crystal formations around them brightened in response to their emotions, colors shifting from pastel blues to warmer pinks and golds. The dream fragments drifting through the air gathered closer, drawn to the energy flowing between the two figures beside the steaming pool.
From that first dance,
He admitted, his eyes never leaving hers.
something recognized you. Something beyond conscious thought or rational explanation.
He leaned forward slowly, giving her every opportunity to withdraw. Instead, she met him halfway, their lips connecting with gentle exploration that quickly deepened into something more urgent. The silver streak in his hair began to glow faintly, responding to emotion too powerful to be contained entirely in the physical realm. The kiss transformed from tentative to certain, her hand sliding into his hair as his arms encircled her waist, drawing her closer. Around them, the oasis responded, crystal formations pulsing with increasingly vibrant light, dream fragments spiraling in complex patterns overhead, the very air seeming to thicken with possibility.
"Wait."
She whispered against his mouth, though her body curved toward his with unmistakable invitation.
"The wellspring showed me things. About us, about what might come. There's so much you don't know."
Tell me then.
He urged, though his hands remained at her waist, thumbs tracing gentle circles that sent warmth spiraling through her despite the serious discussion. She hesitated, weighing the burden of prophecy against the precious connection they'd forged.
"The ancient prison weakens."
She finally explained, the words tumbling out as though relieved to be spoken after so long constrained.
"The first sorceress stirs. My blood, descendant of the Plague Maker, carries power to either strengthen her bonds or break them completely."
Understanding dawned in his eyes, the silver streak in his hair brightening further.
And my heritage.
He added, making the connection.
Dreamwalker's son. We're both pieces in a game centuries old.
"Together they break or together they seal."
She quoted, the prophecy's weight evident in her voice.
"The choice approaches, Elian. A choice that may require terrible sacrifice.
Something shifted in his expression. Not withdrawal as she'd feared, but deepening resolve that transformed his features with quiet determination.
Then we face it together,
He stated, the simplicity of his acceptance stealing her breath.
Whatever comes, whatever choice awaits, we face it as one.
Tears spilled down her cheeks, emotion too powerful to contain behind diplomatic masks long worn. His thumbs gently wiped them away, tenderness in his touch that spoke volumes beyond words.
The future will arrive whether we prepare for it or not.
He murmured, leaning his forehead against hers.
But tonight is ours alone.
This time when their lips met, something fundamental shifted between them. The physical connection became gateway to something deeper as the silver streak in his hair blazed with sudden brilliance. Around them, reality thinned, the boundary between waking world and dreamscape becoming permeable as their consciousness expanded beyond ordinary limitation. They remained physically present in the dreamer's oasis, yet simultaneously existed within the glass bridge realm they'd visited before. Stars surrounded them on all sides, infinite cosmic expanse cradling their entwined forms as physical passion translated into dreamscape energy. Clothing fell away with dreamlike ease, their bodies revealing themselves to each other in both realms simultaneously. In the physical world, they sank onto the moss cushions beside the steaming pool, its warmth enveloping them in gentle mist. In the dreamscape, they floated among stars that rearranged themselves in response to each caress, each whispered endearment, each moment of discovery. Thalia gasped as Elian's hands explored territory never before charted, his touch somehow both gentle and urgent at once. The stars beneath his skin emerged fully, constellations shifting in response to growing passion. Her own body began to glow with answering light. Not starlight, but something golden violet that pulsed in rhythm with her accelerating heartbeat.
Beautiful,
He breathed, wonder in his voice as he witnessed her transformation.
You're even more extraordinary here than in the waking world.
Show me.
She urged, pulling him closer. Inhibition falling away like discarded armor.
Show me what it means to exist between worlds.
Their bodies joined with exquisite care that quickly gave way to rising urgency. Physical pleasure transcended ordinary boundaries as their consciousness remained partially in the dreamscape, allowing them to experience connection on levels beyond mere flesh. Each sensation doubled, then tripled in intensity. Physical touch enhanced by mental unity, enhanced by spiritual recognition that defied rational explanation. In the waking world, the crystal formations surrounding them pulsed with increasing brilliance, responding to energy being generated and exchanged. The dream fragments gathered into swirling vortex overhead, creating patterns too complex for ordinary minds to interpret. The water in the pool began to glow from within, steam rising in shapes that briefly resembled human forms before dissolving back into formless mist. In the dreamscape, stars spun around them in accelerating spirals, galaxies forming and dissolving in response to their movements. The glass bridge beneath them widened, becoming a platform that captured and reflected their joined light. Reality bent and flexed at their shared will, becoming malleable clay shaped by passion unfettered by physical limitation. They moved together with increasing harmony, finding rhythm that resonated through both realms simultaneously. Words became unnecessary as consciousness flowed between them without barrier. His thoughts becoming hers, her emotions becoming his. Distinction blurring until separation seemed arbitrary construct rather than fundamental truth.
I want you.
His mind whispered directly into hers, the thought carrying heat and longing beyond what verbal declaration could have conveyed. Beyond reason, beyond duty, beyond fate itself. I need you.
Yes.
she responded, the agreement flowing from her essence without reservation, though deeper emotions remained carefully guarded behind walls, not yet ready to fall. Her thoughts conveyed desire, wonder, and connection, but stopped short of the declaration his had contained. Their shared climax transcended ordinary experience. Ecstasy multiplied across realms as physical release synchronized with dreamscape expansion that sent shockwaves through both worlds simultaneously. For one eternal moment, they existed beyond time itself. Pure energy untethered from constraint, pure connection unfiltered by doubt. Then, gradually, reality reasserted itself. Their consciousness settled back into primarily physical forms, though the boundary remained thinner than before. They lay entwined beside the glowing pool, breath synchronizing as they slowly returned to themselves. The crystal formations around them dimmed to gentle illumination once more, though they continued pulsing in rhythm that matched their heartbeats. The dream fragments dispersed, resuming their aimless dance through the oasis air. The water in the pool returned to ordinary stillness, steam rising in formless clouds rather than deliberate shapes. Elian cradled Thalia against his chest, one hand idly stroking her hair, while the other remained firmly around her waist as though afraid she might disappear, if not anchored to him. The silver streaks in his hair had returned to normal luster, stars beneath his skin fading to invisibility once more.
I never imagined.
She murmured, voice tinged with wonder and lingering pleasure.
Is it always like that for your people? Existing in both worlds simultaneously?
I wouldn't know,
he admitted, pressing a kiss to her temple.
This is as new to me as it is to you. My father's abilities have been dormant within me until recently. What we just shared.
He shook his head, seemingly at a loss for words.
Transcendent,
she supplied, fingers tracing patterns across his chest where stars had been visible moments before.
like touching eternity.
He nodded, tightening his arms around her, as though the memory alone was enough to rekindle desire. For several heartbeats, they simply existed together in comfortable silence, physical and emotional satisfaction creating bubble of contentment that temporarily held the outside world at bay.
What happens now?
She finally asked, the question carrying weight beyond immediate circumstances.
We rest.
He replied, practical concerns reasserting themselves.
We've both exhausted ourselves beyond safe limits. Tomorrow comes soon enough, with all its complications.
She nodded against his chest, recognizing the wisdom in his words, despite the questions that continued circling in her mind. The shared experience had changed something fundamental between them. Deepened connection that had already been extraordinary into something that defied conventional understanding. As sleep claimed them, their consciousness once again expanded slightly beyond physical boundaries. They didn't fully enter the dreamscape this time, but hovered at its threshold, their minds still partially connected even as their bodies surrendered to necessary rest. Their last shared thought before unconsciousness claimed them completely. Together. Whatever comes, we face it together. Dawn arrived with golden light filtering through crystal spires, casting rainbow patterns across the sleeping couple. Thalia woke first, momentarily disoriented by unfamiliar surroundings, until memory returned with warming rush. She studied Elian's sleeping face, relaxed in slumber, years of caution temporarily erased from his features. Impulsively she traced the silver streak in his hair, marveling at how ordinary it appeared, despite the extraordinary power it represented. At her touch, he stirred, eyes opening to reveal confusion that quickly transformed into recognition and something warmer.
Good morning,
he murmured, voice rough with sleep and lingering contentment.
For a moment I thought I'd dreamed you.
Not entirely inaccurate.
She pointed out with smile that contained hint of mischief unusual for her typically composed demeanor.
We did spend considerable time in the dreamscape.
He laughed, the sound uninhibited in a way she'd never heard from him before. His arms tightened around her, drawing her closer for kiss that held promise of repeating previous night's explorations. A disturbance at the oasis perimeter shattered the moment, the sand lion releasing warning growl that echoed between crystal spires with unusual resonance. Elian was immediately alert, reaching for clothing and weapons with practiced efficiency that spoke of years spent surviving desert dangers.
What is it?
She asked, following his lead with less practiced but equally urgent movements.
Company?
He replied tersely, fastening his belt with the silver knife secured at his hip.
The kind we don't want.
Fully dressed, they moved cautiously toward the oasis entrance, keeping to shadows cast by crystal formations. Dream fragments scattered before them, sensing the shift from harmony to tension with apparent distress. What they saw at the perimeter froze them both in mid-step. Lord Cormac Aurelius himself stood just beyond the crystal spires, surrounded by a full platoon of elite Bellatori warriors, whose battle trance marks already glowed with activation. Unlike Lorene's gaudy command presence, the Sovereign Lord projected cold efficiency, his perfect form encased in armor of some strange metal that absorbed rather than reflected light. Most disturbing of all, he looked directly at them despite the oasis's natural camouflage, his gold-flecked eyes fixing on their position with predatory certainty.
Lady Thalia,
he called, his harmonically resonant voice carrying easily across the intervening space.
I believe we had an appointment in Perotus that you've inconsiderately postponed. And Courier Norwood.
His perfect features arranged themselves into expression of calculated assessment.
Or should I say, son of the Dreamwalker. Your unexpected talents have forced significant revisions to my plans.
Elian shifted slightly, positioning himself partially in front of Thalia, despite knowing she was Aurelius's primary target. Cormac's smile contained nothing of warmth, only aesthetic perfection divorced from genuine emotion.
If it pleases you to accompany me,
his perfect lips curved in a smile that never reached his eyes.
I insist upon it.
Chapter 9, Part 2, The City of Flame. A leaden silence fell across the dreamer's oasis as Cormac's words hung in the morning air. The dream fragments that had danced so freely through the sanctuary now scattered, fleeing from the sovereign's presence like frightened birds. Thalia felt the weight of gold-flecked eyes upon her, assessing, calculating, seeing beyond mere flesh to the potential her blood contained. Elian's hand found hers, fingers interlacing with protective urgency. The silver streak in his hair caught the morning light, glinting with subdued defiance. His body shifted subtly, angling between her and the waiting sovereign.
And if we decline your insistence?
His voice carried that rough edge that emerged in moments of greatest danger, each word weighted with careful restraint. Cormac's perfect features arranged themselves into an expression of polite surprise, as though the possibility of refusal had never occurred to him. The gold flecks in his amber eyes swirled with barely contained impatience.
Decline? How curious a notion.
His harmonically resonant voice carried layers of condescension beneath its musical cadence.
One does not decline the inevitable, dear courier. One merely determines whether the journey shall be comfortable.
With a gesture so minimal it barely disturbed the air, he signaled his Bellatori forward. The enhanced warriors moved with synchronized precision, forming a ceremonial circle around the oasis entrance. Their battle trance marks pulsed with restrained energy, not yet fully activated, but prepared to ignite at their master's command.
What do you want from us?
She asked, her diplomatic training providing steady voice despite the fear clutching at her throat. Cormac's perfect smile widened, revealing teeth too uniformly white to be natural. He extended one elegant hand in a gesture that mimicked invitation while offering none.
What a delightfully direct question. How refreshing to encounter someone who understands the value of efficiency. Discourse without unnecessary embellishment.
His perfect head tilted slightly, studying her with the fascination of a collector examining a rare specimen.
What I want, Lady Thalia, is precisely what you are uniquely positioned to provide. But such matters deserve proper context, not hurried explanation beneath an unforgiving sun. Piratus awaits, my hospitality with it.
Elian's grip tightened around Thalia's hand, his thumb tracing a small circle against her skin. Silent communication that spoke volumes. We have no choice. For now.
You speak of hospitality while surrounding us with warriors,
She observed, her violet blue eyes meeting the sovereign's gold-flecked gaze with surprising steadiness.
an unusual approach to extending an invitation.
Something flickered across Cormac's perfect features, a momentary surprise quickly masked by practiced control. The gold flecks in his eyes swirled more rapidly, betraying interest where his expression revealed nothing.
The escort befits your importance, Lady Thalia. The daughter of water becomes the guest of flame. Historical significance demands appropriate ceremony. Wouldn't you agree?
He gestured toward the waiting formation.
Please, your mount awaits.
Beyond the Bellatori circle, a magnificent conveyance had been prepared. A desert palanquin supported by 4 sand lions, whose scales gleamed with unnatural brightness in the morning light. The structure itself was a marvel of engineering and ostentation, its frame constructed of some strange metal that absorbed heat without transferring it to the interior, its crimson canopy embroidered with golden flames that seemed to move of their own accord. Thalia glanced toward Elian, seeking his assessment. The silent communication that had developed between them over their journey now functioned with remarkable efficiency, requiring no words to convey complex meaning.
We seem to have attracted quite the reception committee,
He muttered, dark eyes scanning the surrounding forces with professional evaluation.
20 elite Bellatori, the sovereign himself, and
His gaze sharpened, focusing on a shadow that seemed slightly darker than those surrounding it.
at least 1 umbral, perhaps more.
The silver streak in his hair caught the light as he leaned closer, his voice dropping to barely audible whisper.
Accept the invitation, maintain diplomatic presence, learn what we can while conserving strength.
Thalia nodded almost imperceptibly, then straightened her spine with practiced poise. The Fathermark's daughter reasserting herself after hours of being simply Thalia. The diplomatic mask settled into place with the comfort of long familiarity. Yet now it felt somehow different, a conscious choice rather than instinctive retreat.
Lord Aurelius.
She inclined her head with precisely calculated respect, enough to acknowledge his position without suggesting submission.
Aquilon appreciates your attention to proper protocol. We accept your invitation to Piratus.
Cormac's perfect smile remained unchanged, though the gold flecks in his eyes spun with increased intensity. Pleasure at her capitulation or irritation at her careful wording, impossible to determine.
Splendid. The first act of wisdom is recognizing the path already chosen for you.
He turned with fluid grace that betrayed his enhanced nature, gesturing for them to follow.
Piratus awaits your pleasure.
The Bellatori formation adjusted with practiced precision, creating an honor guard that was simultaneously escort and prison. Thalia and Elian were guided to the waiting palanquin, helped aboard by attendants whose perfect movements suggested sovereign blood diluted through generations of careful breeding. As they settled onto cushions of startling luxury, Thalia allowed herself one backward glance at the dreamer's oasis, the sanctuary that had briefly offered respite and revelation. The crystal spires were already beginning to fade from ordinary perception, their magical camouflage reasserting itself as they departed. Soon the location existed only in memory, a secret once again hidden from those not attuned to the spaces between worlds. The palanquin lurched into motion, the sand lions beneath it coordinating their 6-legged stride with perfect synchronization. Ahead, Cormac rode his personal mount, a sand lion nearly twice the size of its companions, its scales the color of fresh blood in sunlight. The formation moved over a ridge of golden sand, and suddenly the horizon transformed. Pyrotus, the walking city of flame, stood revealed in the morning light. Unlike Aquilon's crystalline elegance, Pyrotus projected industrial might, a massive metropolis built upon the shell of its carrier beast, whose form resembled an armored lizard of impossible size. Smoke rose from countless stacks arranged in concentric circles around the city's core, where a massive central furnace glowed with orange intensity, visible even at this distance. The buildings themselves appeared constructed of dark metal and stone, the color of burnt umber, their shapes angular and aggressive compared to Aquilon's flowing curves. Most striking were the perpetual flames that crowned major structures, controlled fires that burned without consuming their platforms, their colors ranging from ordinary orange to unnatural blue, green, and even black. These flames moved with disturbing intelligence, forming patterns that communicated information throughout the city with more efficiency than any normal signal system.
Pyrotus in all its terrible glory,
he murmured, his voice pitched low enough that only Thalia could hear.
I've delivered messages here 7 times. Never stayed longer than necessary.
For good reason, I imagine,
she replied, equally quiet. As their procession approached the walking city, she analyzed its structure with the practiced eye of someone raised in diplomatic evaluation of potential allies and enemies. The defensive capabilities were immediately apparent. Multiple tiers of weaponry embedded within the city's external walls, platforms housing what appeared to be flamethrowers of extraordinary scale, and watchposts staffed by Bellatori, whose enhanced vision could detect threats miles distant. Less obvious but equally concerning were the symbols she began to notice recurring throughout the city's architecture. A stylized flame surrounding a 9-pointed star. The emblem appeared on banners, was embedded in building facades, and had been worked into the very pattern of streets visible from their elevated approach.
the first sorceress,
she realized with cold certainty. Not merely metaphorical devotion, but actual worship. The wellspring visions resurfaced in her memory. The first sorceress in her laboratory, creating the first sovereigns through brutal experimentation, establishing her dominion through calculated cruelty and magical compulsion, falling to rebellion, yet somehow lingering in her crystal prison, waiting for opportunity to return. A shiver traced Thalia's spine despite the desert heat. If Cormac's attachment to the first sorceress went beyond historical reverence to active devotion, their situation was far more dangerous than she had initially assessed.
You see it?
He observed, noting her focus on the recurring symbol.
The cult of the first. Rumors suggested Cormac had revived the old traditions, but seeing it so openly displayed.
The remainder of his thought remained unspoken, but hung between them with palpable weight. Open worship means confidence. Confidence suggests planning approaching fruition. Their procession reached the massive ramp that led upward into Pyrotus proper. Unlike Aquilon's gentle inclines, this approach rose at punishing angle, a deliberate design choice that favored defenders and challenged visitors. The sand lions navigated it with practiced ease, their six-legged stride maintaining perfect stability despite the steep grade. As they ascended, the full sensory impact of Pyrotus became inescapable. Heat radiated from the city in palpable waves, carrying scents of metal, coal, and strange chemical compounds, unlike anything found in Aquilon's water-purified air. Sound assaulted them from all directions, the rhythmic clanging of forges, the hiss of steam released through pressure valves, the constant low rumble of the central furnace that provided power to the entire metropolis. Crowds lined the streets as they proceeded deeper into the city, their faces showing that unique combination of curiosity and wariness that characterized populations living under authoritarian control. These were not the easy expressions of Aquilon's water merchants, but the watchful gazes of people who understood that attention could be either beneficial or dangerous, depending on the whims of those in power.
The people seem
Cautious.
He supplied, his voice pitched to carry no further than her ears.
Pyritus rewards loyalty and punishes dissent with equal efficiency. The furnace requires constant feeding, both with fuel and with those who question the flame.
Thalia's diplomatic training had included extensive briefings on each walking city's governance, but seeing theory manifested in lived reality brought new dimension to academic knowledge. These citizens existed under the perpetual heat of Cormac's attention, too direct for comfort, yet necessary for survival in the harsh desert environment. The procession wound upward through successive tiers of the city, each level displaying greater wealth and proximity to power than the one below. At the highest tier, directly surrounding the central furnace complex, stood what could only be Cormac's palace, a structure of imposing scale whose black stone walls were veined with what appeared to be actual magma flowing through transparent conduits. Flames of pure white crowned its towers, burning with such intensity that looking directly at them caused pain.
Home?
Announced the sovereign, who had slowed his mount to draw alongside their palanquin.
The Crucible Palace welcomes the Daughter of Water and her companion.
The subtle emphasis placed on the final word carried clear message. Elian was being acknowledged as connected to Thalia, but not as someone who merited direct address or recognition.
an impressive structure.
She observed, diplomatic training providing appropriate response despite her internal unease.
The integration of flame into functional architecture speaks to Pyritus's unique approach to environmental adaptation.
Cormac's perfect features arranged themselves into an expression of pleased surprise, as though he had not expected such technical appreciation from an Aquilon diplomat.
How refreshingly observant. Most visitors from water-bound cities fixate on superficial differences rather than underlying principles.
His gold-flecked eyes studied her with heightened interest.
The Crucible Palace channels heat from the central furnace throughout its entire structure, creating micro-environments suitable for various purposes, quite unlike Aquilon's passive crystal amplification system.
The easy way he referenced Aquilon's architectural secrets, information not openly shared with other walking cities, sent another warning signal through Thalia's awareness. Cormac's intelligence network clearly extended deeper into her home than anyone had suspected. Their procession passed through massive gates crafted from some strange black metal that absorbed light rather than reflecting it. The courtyard beyond revealed a garden unlike any in Aquilon, plants engineered to thrive in extreme heat, their structures metallic rather than organic, bearing flowers that appeared crafted from living flame. Attendants rushed forward as the palanquin halted, bowing deeply before assisting Thalia and Elian to disembark.
"You will be shown to appropriate quarters,"
he announced, dismounting with inhuman grace from his blood-scaled mount.
"Refreshment, rest, appropriate attire for the evening's formal reception. All has been arranged in anticipation of your arrival."
He turned to Thalia, perfect features arranged in an expression of respectful attention that somehow managed to convey its opposite.
"I trust the accommodation will prove satisfactory, though perhaps lacking the aquatic elements to which you are accustomed."
Adaptability is foundational to diplomatic service.
She replied smoothly, inclining her head with precisely calculated respect.
Aquilon appreciates Pyritus's hospitality.
Something flickered in Cormac's gold-flecked eyes, amusement, perhaps, at her continued insistence on representing Aquilon rather than acknowledging her personal captivity.
Indeed, adaptation. Such a fascinating concept.
He gestured toward waiting attendants, their uniforms bearing that same stylized flame surrounding a 9-pointed star.
"We shall continue our discourse over the evening meal. Until then, consider the Crucible Palace your sanctuary. Within reason, of course."
With that final qualification hanging in the air, he departed, perfect form moving with fluid grace that betrayed his enhanced nature. The Bellatori formation remained, transitioning seamlessly from honor guard to prison wardens without changing their positioning. The attendants guided Thalia and Elian through a series of corridors whose black stone walls radiated uncomfortable heat, despite the cooling systems evidently embedded within them. Elaborate tapestries depicted historical scenes, or perhaps religious iconography, centered around a female figure whose features remained artfully indistinct, yet whose golden aura marked her as the first sorceress. In each image, she bestowed gifts upon kneeling recipients, their transformed bodies rising with newfound power, while ordinary humans bowed in worshipful postures around them. Eventually, they reached a suite of rooms that under other circumstances might have been considered luxurious. The space featured multiple chambers arranged around a central atrium, where a controlled flame burned in perpetual fountain, its heat somehow contained within a precise circular boundary. Furnishings of dark wood inlaid with red metals provided seating and sleeping arrangements, while tables bore refreshments that released aromatic steam into the dry air.
Lord Aurelius requests your presence at the formal reception in 4 hours,
intoned the chief attendant, her voice carrying the careful neutrality of someone trained to reveal nothing of personal thought.
Appropriate attire has been provided. Refreshments replenish themselves when consumed. Should you require anything else, speak your needs aloud. The room hears.
With that cryptic statement, the attendants withdrew, the heavy door closing behind them with audible click that confirmed what remained unspoken. Guests or prisoners, the distinction existed only in terminology. Elian moved immediately to examine their surroundings, his courier's training evident in the methodical way he checked for surveillance or potential escape routes. His expression remained carefully neutral, but the tension in his shoulders spoke volumes to Thalia's increasingly attuned perception.
Impressive accommodations?
He finally stated, voice pitched to normal conversational level, despite the clear implication of listeners.
Piratus spares no expense for its guests.
He caught Thalia's eye, then glanced meaningfully toward the perpetual flame fountain in the chamber's center. Understanding bloomed within her. The controlled fire likely served multiple purposes, including audio disruption directly around it. She moved to stand beside the fountain, feeling its strange heat that somehow failed to spread beyond its boundary.
Quite impressive indeed,
She agreed, positioning herself within the apparent surveillance blind spot.
The integration of flame technology suggests considerable advancement since my last briefing on Piratus's capabilities.
Elian joined her within the flame's disruption field, his voice dropping to barely audible whisper.
They're monitoring everything. The room hears wasn't metaphorical. Awakened glass in the walls, probably tied directly to Cormac's awareness.
Thalia nodded almost imperceptibly, diplomatic training providing neutral expression despite the chilling information.
Options?
She murmured, matching his volume precisely.
Limited for now. My abilities haven't recovered from last night.
A hint of something warmer flashed across his features before being masked by practical concern.
The silver knife remains dormant. We play along, gather information, identify weaknesses.
The mention of the previous night sent unexpected heat blooming across Thalia's skin. Memory resurged with visceral clarity, their bodies entwined beside the luminescent pool. Consciousness expanded beyond ordinary boundaries, connection on levels that transcended mere physical pleasure. The intimacy they had shared suddenly felt exposing, as though she had revealed vulnerabilities that extended beyond physical nakedness into emotional territory previously guarded by diplomatic armor. Something of her internal discomfort must have shown in her expression, because Elian's brow furrowed slightly with unspoken question. Before he could voice it, however, Thalia stepped away from the flame fountain, retreating both from its disruptive protection and from the man who had somehow bypassed carefully constructed defenses to touch something essential within her.
We should prepare for the reception,
she announced, voice returning to normal volume, appropriate for surveillance.
Lord Aurelius clearly has specific agenda. The sooner we understand it, the better positioned we'll be to formulate an appropriate response.
The diplomatic phrasing emerged automatically. She moved toward chambers marked with feminine symbols, needing momentary solitude to reconstruct her internal barriers that had begun crumbling since her first encounter with Elian at the Convergence Masquerade. What am I doing? She questioned herself as the door closed between them. Diplomatic protocol requires emotional distance, objective assessment. This connection complicates everything. The wellspring visions resurfaced in her memory. Ancient prison, weakening bonds, the choice between strengthening or breaking the first sorceress's confinement. Now additional layers had been added to an already complex situation. Cormac's evident worship of the imprisoned sorceress, his knowledge of Thalia's bloodline, his recognition of Elian's Dreamwalker heritage, and beneath these external complications lay something more personally disturbing. Her own growing attachment to a man whose presence increasingly influenced her thoughts and decisions. Diplomatic training had prepared her to navigate complex political landscapes while maintaining emotional distance. Nothing had prepared her for navigating complex political landscapes while experiencing an emotional connection. The provided chambers contained bathing facilities unlike anything in Aquilon, water heated by controlled flames that emerged directly from fixtures crafted of that same strange black metal used throughout the palace. Steam filled the space as she cleansed desert dust from her skin, the moisture peculiarly heavy as though containing mineral components not found in Aquilon's purified reservoirs. Attire had indeed been provided, a gown of deep crimson fabric that seemed to capture and amplify the available light, its complex construction clearly designed to display Pyrotus craftsmanship while accommodating Aquilon aesthetic preferences. The diplomatic message woven into its very creation was obvious. We understand you. We can provide what you need while incorporating you into our framework. As she dressed, Thalia consciously reconstructed her diplomatic persona, the mask worn since childhood that allowed her to function in complex political environments without revealing personal vulnerabilities. The familiar patterns of thought provided comfort, yet now felt somehow constrictive, as though she had outgrown a garment. By the time she emerged from the private chambers, she had regained her outward composure. Elian waited in the central atrium, similarly transformed by the provided attire, formal garments of Pyrotus design that emphasized his height and lean strength, while incorporating subtle elements reminiscent of desert courier tradition. The silver streak in his hair remained his most distinctive feature, catching light from the perpetual flame fountain with a metallic gleam that no fabric, however luxurious, could overshadow. His eyes widened slightly at her appearance, appreciation evident before being carefully masked by professional neutrality. Something had changed in his demeanor as well, a return to the guarded watchfulness that had characterized their initial interactions, as though sensing her emotional withdrawal and responding in kind.
You look every inch the diplomat,
he observed, voice carrying carefully modulated respect without the warmth that had developed between them.
Aquilon will be well represented.
The formal acknowledgement of her official role, rather than personal connection, sent contradictory responses through Thalia's emotional landscape. Relief at the restoration of familiar boundaries, yet unexpected disappointment at the loss of intimacy so recently discovered.
As will the desert routes,
she replied with equal formality, acknowledging his courier status with appropriate respect.
Lord Aurelius clearly understands the value of proper presentation.
The subtle shift in their dynamic hung between them, neither acknowledging its existence even as both recognized the change. Before further interaction could occur, a chime sounded throughout their chambers, musical note that vibrated with harmonic undertones. The heavy door opened without physical contact, revealing the same attendants who had escorted them earlier. Their neutral expressions and careful posture suggested lengthy training in revealing nothing while observing everything.
Lord Aurelius awaits your presence,
Announced the chief attendant, a carefully modulated voice carrying neither judgment nor emotion.
Please follow.
They were led through corridors whose architectural complexity bespoke both aesthetic ambition and defensive calculation. Multiple routes to the same destination, doors that disappeared into walls when closed, surveillance points disguised as decorative elements. The entire palace functioned as an expression of sovereign psychology, beautiful, efficient, and designed to maintain control while creating the illusion of openness. Eventually, they reached massive doors crafted from interlocking panels of dark metal and transparent crystal that contained actual flame moving in controlled patterns. The doors opened without a visible mechanism, revealing a reception hall of imposing scale and calculated ostentation. The chamber's ceiling soared several stories overhead, supported by columns that appeared crafted from solidified magma. Controlled flames of various colors burned at strategic intervals, providing both illumination and theatrical effect. The far wall consisted entirely of transparent crystal that revealed the central furnace complex beyond, massive machinery processing unknown fuel sources into the energy that powered all of Pyrotus. Gathered within this impressive space were individuals whose attire and bearing marked them as Pyrotus elite, high-ranking officials, noble families with generational connections to the ruling bloodline, and specialists whose technical expertise had earned them position, if not hereditary status. At the chamber's center stood Cormac Aurelius, his perfect form now attired in ceremonial garments that somehow enhanced rather than concealed his sovereign nature. The gold flecks in his eyes seemed brighter against the backdrop of controlled flame, swirling with intensity.
Lady Thalia Merivin of Aquilon,
Announced the chief attendant, her voice amplified by the chamber's acoustic design.
and escort.
The deliberate diminishment of Elian's status sent subtle ripple through the gathered assembly. Meaningful glances exchanged, slight adjustments in posture indicating recalculation of social equations. In the hierarchy-conscious environment of Pyrotus, such distinctions carried significant weight. Cormac approached with that fluid grace unique to sovereigns, his perfect features arranged in expression of welcome that almost, but not quite, reached his gold-flecked eyes.
Lady Thalia,
He greeted, voice carrying harmonics that seemed deliberately modulated to create a specific emotional response in listeners.
radiant as flame itself, Pyrotus is honored by your presence.
He extended one perfect hand in gesture that mimicked traditional Aquilon greeting while subtly altering it to emphasize his dominant position. Thalia recognized the manipulation, but responded with diplomatic precision, matching his movement with one that acknowledged respect without conceding authority.
Lord Aurelius,
She replied, her voice carrying the practiced modulation of someone raised for diplomatic performances.
the Crucible Palace impresses with both its aesthetic achievement and functional efficiency. Aquilon appreciates the opportunity for cultural exchange.
Something flickered across Cormac's perfect features. Perhaps appreciation for her careful navigation of their ambiguous situation, or irritation at her continued insistence on framing her presence as official rather than coerced.
Cultural exchange. What a delightfully diplomatic characterization.
His perfect lips curved into smile that contained no warmth.
Come, your position of honor awaits, as do introductions to individuals whose significance will become apparent.
He guided them toward an elevated dais, where formal dining arrangement had been prepared. The table itself appeared crafted from single piece of that strange black metal used throughout the palace, its surface polished to mirror perfection. Place settings featured utensils of gold inlaid with red crystal that caught and amplified the light. At each position, a small flame burned within a crystal sphere. Thalia was positioned at Cormac's right hand, her place marked by flame of an unusual violet hue that seemed a deliberate reference to her distinctive eyes. Elian was seated several positions distant, separated from her by individuals whose placement created both a physical and a social barrier. As they settled into their assigned positions, Cormac performed introductions with practiced precision. The gathered individuals represented a cross-section of Pirotus power structure, Master Forge Rite Kalen, High Combustion Theorist Sarah, and Commander Darius of the Bellatori Elite, whose battle trance marks formed unusually complex patterns across exposed skin. Most concerning were those introduced with religious rather than functional titles. Flame Oracle Lysandra, whose eyes had been replaced with crystals that glowed with internal fire. Ash Speaker Thorn, whose skin bore ritual scarification that formed that same 9-pointed star Thalia had observed throughout the city. And Ember Keeper Malik, whose robes featured elaborate embroidery depicting scenes from the first sorceress's reign.
Now that introductions have established our illustrious company,
he announced, raising a crystal goblet filled with liquid that glowed like captured sunrise.
let us celebrate this auspicious convergence of flame and water, of ancient bloodlines and modern purpose.
Attendants approached with silver platters balanced on heat-resistant gloves, each dish emitting curls of aromatic steam in specific patterns, spirals, zigzags, and perfect circles that suggested deliberate control rather than natural evaporation. The first course arrived before Thalia with a ceremonial flourish, a crystal bowl containing what appeared to be living flame suspended in clear liquid. "Ember soup," explained the attendant, her neutral tone belying the spectacle she presented. "Consume while active for full flavor expression." The bowl radiated gentle heat against Thalia's fingertips, and she lifted the delicate crystal spoon provided. The liquid inside shifted between amber and ruby, tiny motes of actual fire dancing beneath the surface. She cautiously brought a spoonful to her lips, expecting scorching heat, but instead experiencing a sensation of warming from within. Spices that bloomed across her tongue in sequential waves. Cinnamon gave way to something like saffron but sharper, followed by an unfamiliar essence that evoked desert sunsets and open horizons. Across the table, others consumed dishes equally dramatic in presentation. Elian received a black plate bearing what appeared to be perfectly cut gemstones that, when touched with utensils, revealed themselves as vegetables crystallized through some alchemical process. Each gem shattered with precise resistance, releasing concentrated flavor that lingered on the palate with surprising persistence. Commander Darius tore into meat that still smoldered at its edges, the center remaining impossibly rare despite the flames that occasionally flickered across its surface. The Bellatori's expression reflected appreciation for sustenance that matched his enhanced metabolism's demands, fuel for a body engineered for warfare. Conversation flowed around the table, the gathered elite clearly performing for their sovereign's benefit, while simultaneously assessing the unusual visitors in their midst. Thalia navigated the social currents with practiced ease, her diplomatic training providing appropriate responses to inquiries that often contained hidden tests or traps.
"The daughter of water graces our humble gathering,"
observed the Flame Oracle, her crystal eyes glowing brighter as she focused on Thalia.
"The fire dreams spoke of your coming, child. The patterns in the sacred flames showed violet eyes gazing into an ancient prison."
Pyridus's divination traditions differ significantly from Aquilon's water scrying,
she replied, maintaining diplomatic neutrality while neither confirming nor denying the oracle's claim.
Such cultural variations demonstrate the adaptive ingenuity of human societies in the endless desert.
Human societies?
Repeated the high combustion theorist, amusement coloring her tone. Her copper-red skin marked her as Igniti ancestry, though her features suggested mixed bloodline rather than pure descent.
How charmingly inclusive of you, Lady Thalia, as though the 9 enhanced species were merely variations on baseline humanity.
Before Thalia could formulate an appropriate response to this potential provocation, Cormac intervened with practiced smoothness.
Lady Thalia observes from an Aquilon perspective, where enhanced species hold advisory rather than authoritative positions.
His perfect features arranged themselves into an expression of benevolent correction rather than criticism.
Beneath water's tranquil surface, hierarchy flows in channels less visible, but no less rigid than Perotus's open acknowledgement of the fundamental differences between baseline and elevated humanity.
Thalia recognized the diplomatic trap, but navigated it with careful precision.
Differing governance approaches offer opportunity for comparative analysis, with neither system claiming universal superiority.
She acknowledged, inclining her head slightly toward Cormac in a gesture that recognized his point, without conceding the larger argument.
Adaptability remains essential as the walking cities continue their migrations through the ever-changing environment.
From his position several seats away, Elian watched this verbal sparring with an outward calm that masked his heightened alertness. His eyes missed nothing: the subtle exchanges between Cormac and his religious advisors, the calculating assessment in Commander Darius's gaze, the way certain words triggered almost imperceptible reactions from the gathered elite. Thalia caught his attention briefly, the connection between them humming with unspoken communication, despite their physical separation.
Before the great betrayal, humanity ascended toward its true potential,
intoned the Ash speaker, his scarified features animated with fervent belief.
The 9 sisters lifted us from dust, granting each of us specialized perfection where once existed only limited uniformity. Our current separations, these isolated walking cities, represent a tragic fragmentation of that unified vision.
Historical perspectives naturally vary between the walking cities,
she observed, maintaining diplomatic neutrality while carefully avoiding a direct challenge to their religious beliefs.
Aquilon's archives present a somewhat different account of the Transformation era and subsequent rebellion. The historical record suggests considerable suffering accompanied those transformations,
she noted with careful understatement.
Documentation from multiple independent sources indicates that many did not survive the enhancement processes.
A tense silence fell across the table, the gathered elite exchanging glances that communicated volumes without words. Cormac's perfect features remained composed, though the gold flecks in his eyes swirled with increased intensity.
Progress demands sacrifice. Creation requires destruction. Transformation necessitates pain.
His harmonically resonant voice carried those statements not as opinion, but as fundamental truth.
The limitations of baseline understanding prevent proper appreciation of the necessary costs. A child cannot comprehend why medicine tastes bitter, only that it does.
Thalia recognized the dangerous territory into which the conversation had ventured, but maintained diplomatic composure.
Different perspectives offer valuable diversity to overcoming challenges,
she observed, redirecting toward less contentious ground.
The walking cities themselves demonstrate that multiple successful adaptations to the harsh environment remain possible.
Cormac studied her with those gold-flecked eyes, his perfect head tilting slightly.
Indeed. Adaptation. Such a fascinating process.
His perfect lips curved into a smile that contained no warmth.
Which brings us, quite naturally, to the purpose behind your presence in Perotus.
The gathered elite straightened with sudden attention, conversation ceasing as the focus shifted entirely to their sovereign. Even the attendants stationed along the chamber walls seemed to hold their breath,
Lady Thalia carries within her veins a remarkable legacy, blood descending directly from the creator of the Dream Plague,
he announced, each word precisely weighted for maximum impact.
The formula that once severed our connection to the divine guidance lies dormant within her genetic material, passed through the generations.
The revelation sent a visible shock through those not already privy to this information. The religious officials exchanged glances of almost feverish intensity, while the military and technical specialists grew even more still. Thalia maintained her outward composure.
Bloodline speculation falls outside diplomatic purview,
She stated, neither confirming nor denying his claim.
Aquilon's representative serves a communication function rather than genetic curiosity.
How delightfully evasive,
He replied, genuine amusement coloring his tone for the first time.
but unnecessary. The wellspring confirmed what our research had already indicated. Your direct descent from Viola, the original plague maker. The violet eyes manifest only in her direct lineage, carrying both the curse and the cure within the same genetic sequence.
From his position several seats away, Elian's posture shifted subtly, tension gathering in his shoulders as his hand moved unconsciously to the silver knife that remained dormant at his belt. The gesture did not go unnoticed by Commander Darius, whose battle trance marks brightened slightly.
You mentioned purpose?
She observed, deliberately steering the conversation back to Cormac's earlier statement.
Beyond historical curiosity or genetic lineage, what specific purpose does Pyrodus envision?
Cormac's perfect smile widened, the expression somehow managing to convey genuine pleasure without warmth.
Direct, efficient. I continue to appreciate your conversational economy, Lady Thalia.
He gestured to an attendant, who approached bearing small crystal cube that contained what appeared to be liquid fire, an orange-gold substance that moved with unnatural deliberation within its transparent prison.
Purpose, indeed. The most significant undertaking of our age. The reversal of historical injustice through awakening of imprisoned potential.
He accepted the crystal cube, holding it with reverent care.
The 9 were not destroyed, merely contained, their essence preserved within a crystal matrix deep beneath the endless desert.
He continued, his voice taking on a formal cadence.
The first among them, greatest visionary whose guidance elevated humanity beyond its limited origins, remains conscious within her prison, waiting, watching through dreams that touch receptive minds.
The religious officials nodded with synchronized agreement, their expressions showing fervent belief.
The prison weakens,
He stated.
The matrix requires either renewal or dissolution, and your blood, Lady Thalia, holds the formula for both possibilities.
Cold understanding settled in Salia's chest. The wellspring visions had shown her this truth, the choice between strengthening or breaking the ancient prison. What it hadn't revealed was Cormac's evident determination to influence that choice toward release rather than continued confinement.
And you've invited me to Pyrodus to donate this blood?
She asked. Cormac's perfect laughter contained no humor, only aesthetic appreciation for her continued composure.
Invited. Such delightful persistence in maintaining this diplomatic fiction.
He cradled the crystal cube containing liquid fire with unsettling intimacy.
But yes, essentially correct. Your blood carries the key to developing a cure for the Dream Plague, a restoration of the natural flow of worship energy from human consciousness to the 9. Once this connection is re-established, power will flow once more to the sorceresses, enabling them to break free of their crystal prison and resume their rightful guidance of humanity.
And afterward?
Elian's voice cut through the tension, his question direct where Thalia's approach had been measured.
What happens to the key once the lock is opened?
All eyes turned toward him, many of the gathered elite seeming to notice his presence for the first time, despite his earlier introduction. Cormac's perfect features arranged themselves into an expression of mild surprise as though unexpected to find a desert creature capable of human speech.
The courier expresses concern for his charge. How professionally appropriate.
The condescension in his tone carried clear message about Elian's perceived status.
Be assured, Desert Walker, that Lady Thalia's value extends beyond mere ceremonial function. The first rewards those who serve her purpose.
Thalia caught Elian's eye across the intervening distance. The concern in his eyes registered deeply, warming something within her chest.
When is this blood donation to occur?
She asked, returning attention to Cormac with practiced redirection.
The final preparations near completion,
he replied, gaze shifting from the crystal cube to her face with unsettling intensity.
And if I were to decline participation?
She asked, knowing the answer but needing to establish parameters clearly. Cormac's perfect features arranged themselves into an expression of polite disbelief, as though she had suggested water might flow uphill or flame burn cold.
Decline? How curious a notion.
He repeated his earlier sentiment, perfect consistency in his dismissal of human agency.
One does not decline destiny, Lady Thalia. One merely determines the manner of its fulfillment.
He returned the crystal cube to its waiting attendant, the gesture carrying ritualistic precision that further emphasized religious significance rather than mere scientific process.
The Dreamwalker's son presents more complex equation,
he continued, gaze shifting to Elian with a calculating assessment.
His role in prophecy offers multiple interpretations. Together they break, or together they seal. The heart of the dream child balances the vessel of the plague maker, complementary components whose unity determines the outcome.
The casual reference to their connection, and to Elian's heritage, sent a fresh warning through Thalia's awareness. Cormac knew far more than should have been possible about matters they themselves had only recently discovered.
Prophecy allows for interpretation,
she observed.
Multiple potential outcomes rather than a predetermined result.
Indeed, which explains my enthusiasm for acquiring both components rather than merely one.
His perfect smile contained satisfaction of chess master, who had successfully predicted an opponent's moves several turns in advance.
The vessel requires the heart. The plague maker's blood demands the dream child's essence. Together they manifest the first's design, whether through continued imprisonment or glorious liberation.
With an elegant gesture that somehow managed to convey both finality and anticipation, he signaled the conclusion of the formal meal. The gathered elite rose with synchronized precision that spoke of lengthy practice in court protocols.
Lady Thalia and her companion will remain honored guests within the Crucible Palace, their needs attended to with the appropriate care befitting their significance to the forthcoming ceremonies.
The dismissal, though couched in courteous terms, carried unmistakable command. Attendants materialized beside Thalia and Elian, prepared to escort them back to their assigned chambers. Cormac had taken barely 3 steps towards the grand archway when he paused, turning back with a fluid grace that made even this simple movement appear choreographed. The golden flecks in his amber eyes swirled with sudden intent.
Lady Thalia,
he called, his harmonically resonant voice carrying effortlessly across the chamber.
A moment of your time, if you would. There are certain historical details regarding your lineage that merit private discussion.
Elian immediately tensed beside her, the silver streak in his hair catching the firelight as he stepped forward. His hand drifted unconsciously toward the curved silver knife at his belt, dormant since their arrival, but never surrendered despite Pyrotus protocol.
Alone?
Cormac clarified, perfect features arranging themselves into an expression of polite insistence that contained unmistakable threat beneath its courteous veneer.
Some matters transcend even the closest attachments.
The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Thalia felt Elian's body radiate tension beside her, his breathing shifting into the controlled pattern she recognized from moments before combat. Across the distance separating them, Cormac's smile widened fractionally, as though anticipating, perhaps even hoping for, resistance.
Elian,
She murmured, her fingers brushing his wrist in warning. Through that brief contact, she felt the coiled fury beneath his seemingly calm exterior, the readiness to tear apart the entire chamber if necessary to remain at her side.
I won't let him separate us,
He responded, voice pitched low enough that only she could hear, the rough edge that emerged in moments of danger rasping beneath each word.
Not here. Not when we're surrounded by his power base.
Shadows along the chamber walls suddenly deepened, the darkness congealing into forms more substantial than mere absence of light. 4 umbral manifested from what had appeared to be ordinary decorative recesses, shadow beings moving with liquid grace as they positioned themselves strategically around the chamber. Their translucent arms solidified into blade-like appendages, the threat unmistakable despite their silent manifestation. Elian's hand had nearly reached his knife when the shadows appeared. He froze mid-motion, midnight blue eyes calculating odds with the cold precision of someone accustomed to life or death decisions. 1 umbral alone represented significant danger. 4 simultaneously coordinated with Bellatori elite meant certain defeat regardless of his considerable combat skills.
A wise pause, dream child,
Cormac observed, genuine amusement coloring his perfect voice.
Valor has its place, but so does patience. Lady Thalia will return to you, intact.
6 Bellatori warriors appeared as though summoned by the mere suggestion of confrontation, their battle trance marks already beginning to glow beneath their skin. They moved with the synchronized precision of elite units, forming a ceremonial escort that effectively separated Thalia from Elian while maintaining the appearance of honor guard rather than prison detail. Thalia met Elian's gaze across the widening gap between them, violet blue eyes conveying what words could not in this moment of forced separation. The connection between them, forged in Dreamscape and strengthened through shared danger, stretched but did not break as physical distance increased.
Remember what we learned,
He said, voice pitched precisely to reach her ears alone, the words cryptic enough to mean nothing to their observers.
What holds true in dreams holds true in waking.
The senior Bellatori, his face a roadmap of ritual battle scars, gestured toward the eastern archway with exaggerated courtesy. Lady Thalia, if you would accompany Lord Aurelius to the Amber Chamber, it would be our honor to ensure your safe passage. The phrasing was impeccably polite. The intent behind it left no room for refusal. Thalia squared her shoulders, the diplomatic mask she had worn throughout her life settling into place with practiced ease despite the fear churning beneath her composed exterior. She allowed herself one final glance at Elian, whose expression had transformed into something dangerous, the look of a man calculating not if, but when and how he would tear apart those who separated him from what he protected. She turned away, falling into step beside Cormac with the precise distance that protocol demanded, close enough to suggest compliance, far enough to maintain dignity. As the procession moved toward the eastern archway, the umbral melted back into ordinary shadows, their purpose served through demonstration rather than action. The last thing Thalia saw before the massive doors closed behind her was Elian's face, the silver streak in his hair catching firelight like a promise, his eyes holding hers with an intensity that transcended physical separation. Whatever Cormac intended in this private conference, that connection remained, a tether between souls that even the Lord Sovereign of Piratus, for all his perfect power, could not sever.